Joe Maddon and the Cubs are back in town this week. The first real sign winter ultimately will come to an end. Chicago's very own tie-dye manager and most of his players will take a respite from their off-seasons of sloth-like behavior and convene Friday at the Sheraton Grand Chicago for the annual Cubs convention, baseball's version of Comic-Con, without costumes. For most of them, it will be their first time back since the Cubs' championship reign ended in October at Wrigley Field. Some booked out of town the day after their Game 5 loss to the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series, ready to start their break in a climate more suitable for humans than penguins. Others hung around a little while Anthony Rizzo was pitching batting practice to Pedro Strop a couple of days later. One of the braver Cubs, Kyle Hendricks, planned to stick around until January, shrugging off the bitter weather and making a home here. You can't blame everyone else for leaving, though one person I had hoped would stay in town was Maddon, the ringmaster Ned of the Cubs circus. Maddon, who calls Tampa home, is easily the most Ditka-esque sports personality in Chicago since Mike Ditka himself, and we could really use some comic relief this winter after listening to the droning tones of Fred Hoiberg, Joel Quenneville and the departed John Fox. Last spring in Arizona I tried to convince Maddon to spend one winter in Chicago just to experience what it's like. Former White Sox manager Jerry Manuel made Chicago his full-time home when he was with the Sox, and former Sox player and manager Ozzie Guillen still lives here. It's a great town after all. Why not give it a shot? Kind of cold, Maddon replied. I like the warm weather in the winter. I pretty much am here full-time if you think about it. I'm there from April to season's end. I don't live anywhere more consistently than I live in Chicago right now, April to the end of the playoffs. I've actually lived in my RV more than I lived in Tampa. 2 months in spring training, driving it back, vacation in the wintertime. So Chicago's 1, RV's 2, Tampa's 3, as for actual days living in a spot. Photos of the Cubs' annual fan fest through the years. I'm almost positive the Cubs would let Maddon park his RV in their new plaza if he wanted to live here. He could be like the late, great Rod Beck, the former Cubs closer who parked his 36-foot Winnebago outside Principal Park in Des Moines when pitching for the Iowa Cubs, hosting parties for fans after home games. Anyway, I told Maddon he should just spend a week or two in Chicago during a polar vortex. That's probably all it would take to understand why we are as crazy as we are, and why we spend the off-season thinking about summer and baseball. A -20 wind chill, the hawk wind in his face and the RV covered in frozen dirt and salt, sputtering when his key turns in the ignition. This is us. Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer have survived Chicago's winters. Just one polar vortex, Joe? No shot. I really don't want to, he said. The first Cubs convention I went to, in 2015, it was that cold, and I walked to an event at the Chicago Rehab Center and it was 0.